Some moments don't destroy a life because they are loud. They destroy a life because everyone remembers where they were when they happened. The sound cut through St. Matthew Medical Center just after 3:17 p.m. Nurses stopped typing. A coffee cup paused halfway to someone's lips. A man standing near the elevators slowly lowered his phone from his ear. For one strange second, the entire fourth floor seemed to forget how to breathe. Emily Carter stood near the maternity wing reception desk with one hand resting carefully on the curve of her stomach and the other holding a small envelope filled with ultrasound photos she had picked up less than 10 minutes earlier. 8 months pregnant, she had spent the morning listening to doctors tell her that everything looked healthy and strong. Healthy heartbeat, healthy growth, healthy baby girl. She had smiled so much that her cheeks actually hurt. She remembered thinking that maybe life was finally becoming gentle again. Maybe all marriages had difficult seasons. Maybe Ryan had simply been stressed. Maybe the late meetings and distant eyes and unanswered texts meant nothing at all. Maybe tomorrow would feel different. Then the sound happened. Heads turned toward the hallway near room 418. Emily froze before everyone else did. Because before she saw the woman standing there, she knew exactly who it was. Some instincts arrive before truth does. Vanessa Reed stood near the end of the corridor wearing a cream-colored coat and heels that clicked sharply against the polished hospital floor. She wasn't supposed to be there. Emily had only seen her once before at Ryan's company holiday party 6 months ago. Just a few seconds. Just a smile. Just enough for women to understand things men thought were invisible. Vanessa didn't look nervous. She didn't look angry. Somehow that made Emily's chest tighten even more. She looked calm. Too calm. She walked slowly toward her, each step measured, almost casual, like she had rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times before. Emily stared at her and felt her fingers tighten around the ultrasound envelope. Around them, conversations quietly disappeared. Even strangers could feel tension hanging in the air. A nurse glanced up from the front desk and frowned. Vanessa stopped only a few feet away. Emily noticed something strange. She was smiling. Not a happy smile. Not even a fake smile. The kind of smile people wear when they think they have already won. Emily swallowed carefully. "Vanessa?" she asked softly. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, as if surprised Emily recognized her. "Emily," she said. Her voice sounded warm enough to fool someone who didn't know better. Emily looked around instinctively, almost expecting Ryan to suddenly appear around the corner and explain everything. He didn't. Her heartbeat started climbing. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. The hallway suddenly felt smaller. Vanessa glanced down toward Emily's stomach before looking back into her eyes. Then she leaned slightly closer and lowered her voice until it became almost a whisper. "Ryan is going to choose me." Emily felt the words hit harder than she expected. Not because of what Vanessa said, because of how she said it. Certain, calm, final. The ultrasound envelope slipped slightly in Emily's hand. Behind them, a monitor beeped steadily somewhere down the hall. A child laughed in another room. Life continued moving around them like nothing had happened. But Emily suddenly had a feeling deep inside her chest that by the time the sun disappeared tonight, her world would no longer look the same. Emily stared at Vanessa, but before another word could leave either of their mouths, her mind did something strange. Sometimes fear does that. Sometimes the heart becomes so overwhelmed that it reaches backward instead of forward. 30 minutes earlier, the world had still felt warm. 30 minutes earlier, Emily Carter had been sitting near the large windows inside St. Matthew Medical Center, watching soft January sunlight spill across the polished floor. Outside, small patches of snow still rested along the sidewalks, and people hurried by with coffee cups and winter coats pulled tight against the cold. Inside, everything had felt peaceful. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the small cafe near the lobby. Somewhere nearby, a newborn cried before suddenly becoming quiet again. Emily remembered smiling at that sound. She had always smiled at babies. She sat with both hands resting carefully over her stomach, as if she could somehow hold the entire world together with her fingertips. Her daughter moved slightly beneath her hand. A small movement. A tiny kick. Emily laughed quietly to herself. "Good morning to you too," she whispered. An older woman sitting nearby looked over and smiled. "First baby?" she asked. Emily nodded. "Yes." "Girl or boy?" Emily looked down toward the ultrasound envelope in her lap and smiled even wider. "A girl." The woman smiled back. You can always tell. Mothers get that look in their eyes. Emily had laughed then. She remembered that clearly. She remembered feeling light. She remembered feeling hopeful. The appointment had gone perfectly. Healthy heartbeat. Healthy growth. Everything exactly where it should be. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt like she could finally breathe without that heavy feeling pressing against her chest. Ryan had not come with her that morning. Work meeting, he had said. Again, Emily had told herself not to be upset. Ryan had been busy for months. New investors. New projects. Endless conference calls. Endless dinners. Endless meetings that somehow always stretched later than expected. Marriage was not always perfect. She knew that. People changed. Stress changed people. Life changed people. At least that was what she kept telling herself. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She smiled immediately when she saw Ryan's name across the screen. Her heart still did that. Even now. Even after the distance. Even after the unanswered questions. She opened the message. Meeting running late. Sorry, babe. I will make it up to you tonight. Emily stared at the words for a second. Then she typed back. Everything looks good. She is healthy. 3 small dots appeared almost instantly. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Emily waited. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. 20 seconds. Finally, another message arrived. That is great news. That was it. Nothing else. Emily looked at the screen for several seconds longer than she should have. She stared at those 3 words while something small shifted inside her chest. Not pain exactly. Something quieter than pain. Something colder. Because Ryan used to ask questions. Ryan used to call immediately. Ryan used to want every detail. How big was the baby? What did the doctor say? Did she hear the heartbeat? Ryan used to care about every little thing. Emily locked her phone and slipped it back into her purse. Then she looked down at the ultrasound photos again. Tiny fingers. Tiny profile. Tiny nose. Tears almost reached her eyes, but not from sadness. She leaned back into her chair and whispered softly. You have me, okay? No matter what happens, you have me. Then she smiled. Because 30 minutes earlier, she still believed that promise would be the hardest thing she had to face that day. The strange thing about broken relationships is that they rarely collapse in a single day. Most of the time, they disappear quietly, one small piece at a time, like snow melting from a rooftop. You do not notice it at first. Then one day you look up and realize everything is gone. Emily used to think people who said things like that were dramatic. She understood it now. Looking back, the signs had been there for months. Not huge signs. Not movie signs. Small things. Quiet things. The kind that make you question your own mind before you question the person you love. 3 months earlier, Ryan had started coming home later. At first it sounded reasonable. Investors from Chicago. Dinner meetings. New contracts. Emily remembered sitting at their kitchen island one night waiting for him with a bowl of pasta she had reheated twice. She looked at the microwave clock. 9:37. Then 10:14. Then 10:52. Finally, the front door opened. Ryan walked inside carrying his laptop bag and rubbing his forehead. Long day, he had said. Emily smiled and stood up immediately. I kept dinner warm. Ryan looked toward the kitchen before loosening his tie. I already ate. Emily remembered stopping for just a second. Oh. Ryan kissed her forehead quickly and walked upstairs. That was all. Nothing dramatic happened. No argument. No explanation. Just silence. Emily had stood there looking at 2 plates sitting on the kitchen counter. She remembered thinking that pregnancy was probably making her emotional. She remembered blaming herself. Then there was his phone. Ryan used to leave his phone anywhere. Kitchen counter. Coffee table. Bathroom sink. Sometimes he forgot where he put it all together. Then suddenly it changed. His phone started living in his pocket. Screen down. Always locked. Always nearby. Emily noticed it one Saturday morning while they sat together on the couch. Ryan had gotten a text message. His screen lit up for barely half a second before he turned it away. But half a second can be enough. Sometimes half a second changes everything. Emily had only seen one word. Vanessa. She remembered staring at the television afterward without hearing a single thing. She wanted to ask him. She really did. But another voice inside her spoke first. Do not become that wife. Do not become suspicious. Trust him. Trust your marriage. Trust the father of your child. So she stayed quiet. Weeks passed. Then came the smell. One evening, Ryan walked into their bedroom while Emily folded tiny baby clothes they had bought together. Small pink socks. Tiny white pajamas. things no bigger than her hands. Ryan kissed her cheek and bent down to pick up a shirt from the floor. Emily smelled perfume. Not hers. Something floral. Something expensive. Something unfamiliar. Ryan looked up and smiled. What? Emily shook her head quickly. Nothing. He smiled again and walked toward the bathroom. Emily stared at the closed door after he disappeared inside. Water started running a few seconds later. She remembered sitting there holding a tiny baby sock in her hand while trying to convince herself she was imagining things. Because love does strange things to good people. It makes them protect the person hurting them. It makes them explain things that make no sense. It makes them carry hope long after hope should have left. And standing inside St. Matthew Medical Center now, staring into Vanessa's calm eyes, Emily suddenly realized something terrifying. Deep down, a part of her had known all along. She had simply been too afraid to say it out loud. Emily could still hear the steady beeping of monitors somewhere down the hall. Strange how ordinary sounds continue during moments that do not feel ordinary at all. Vanessa stood in front of her without moving, without blinking much, almost as if she had been waiting for this exact second to arrive. Emily looked at her and suddenly realized something even more unsettling than Ryan's messages or late nights. Vanessa was not guessing. People guess when they are insecure. People guess when they are afraid. Vanessa sounded certain. Emily slowly tightened her fingers around the ultrasound envelope pressed against her chest. "What are you talking about?" she asked quietly. Vanessa gave a small smile and glanced toward Emily's left hand where her wedding ring rested. "You really do not know," she said softly. Emily felt a chill move through her body. Around them, hospital staff continued moving through the hallway, but some eyes had started drifting toward them now. Human beings always sense tension. It pulls attention like gravity. Emily swallowed. "Know what?" Vanessa looked at her for several seconds. Then she laughed lightly under her breath. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Somehow that made it worse. "I thought he would have told you by now." Emily felt her heartbeat begin climbing again. Ryan's face flashed through her mind. Ryan laughing beside her at their wedding reception. Ryan holding her hand during their first ultrasound appointment. Ryan assembling the baby crib in the nursery while pretending he knew what he was doing. Ryan kissing her forehead before work. Ryan promising forever. Suddenly, every memory felt different. Suddenly, every memory felt like it had shadows she never noticed before. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Emily, do you know why Ryan never talks about your family?" Emily frowned slightly. The question felt strange. Completely unexpected. "What does that have to do with anything?" Vanessa tilted her head. "Everything." Emily stared at her. Her family. Nobody ever asked about her family. Ryan barely had. Emily had never thought much about it because she never talked about them either. She had not wanted attention. She had not wanted money or status following her around her entire life the way it had when she was younger. Years ago, she had made a choice. She wanted people to know Emily Carter, not Emily Hayes. Not the daughter of William Hayes. Just Emily. Just herself. Even Ryan knew very little. She had told him her father owned businesses. She had never explained how many businesses. Never explained private jets or boardrooms or newspaper covers. Never explained why cameras used to wait outside restaurants whenever she was a teenager. She hated all of it. Ryan had never pushed. At the time, she thought that meant respect. Standing there now, Emily suddenly remembered something strange from nearly a year ago. Ryan sitting at the kitchen table one evening, holding an old photo album her mother had mailed over. Ryan had stopped at one picture. Emily remembered it clearly now. She had been 16 in the photograph standing beside her father outside some charity event in Boston. Ryan stared at it longer than expected. "Your dad looks familiar," he had said. Emily laughed and took the album from him. "People tell me that all the time." Ryan had not laughed back. He had gone quiet. Very quiet. Vanessa slowly stepped closer. "You know what is funny?" she asked. Emily did not answer. Vanessa smiled again. "Ryan knows a lot more than you think he does." For the first time that afternoon, real fears settled into Emily's chest. Not because of Ryan. Not because of Vanessa. Because suddenly she had a terrible feeling that she was standing in the middle of a story she did not understand yet. Emily looked at Vanessa as if the floor beneath her had shifted 6 inches without warning. The sounds of the hospital seemed farther away now. The rolling wheels of carts. The distant elevator bell. Quiet conversations behind closed doors. Everything felt muted, like she had suddenly been placed underwater. Vanessa watched her carefully and smiled with the confidence of someone who believed the ending had already been written. Emily shook her head slowly. "You are lying," she said, although even to her own ears the words sounded weak. Vanessa sighed, almost sympathetically. "Emily, I almost feel bad for you." Emily felt her stomach tighten. Her daughter shifted again beneath her hand, and instinctively, she placed both palms over her belly. That small movement grounded her. It reminded her to breathe. Inhale. Exhale. One breath at a time. Vanessa looked down briefly before looking back into Emily's eyes. "Do you know what Ryan said about you?" Emily stared at her without speaking. "He said you were sweet, quiet, easy to love." Vanessa paused. "Easy to fool." The words landed heavily in the space between them. Emily blinked slowly. Her throat felt dry. She wanted to tell herself that this woman was trying to hurt her, trying to manipulate her, trying to destroy something. But doubt had already entered the room, and doubt was dangerous because once it arrived, it rarely left quietly. Emily's phone suddenly buzzed inside her purse. Both women looked down at the same time. Ryan. For 1 second, Emily simply stared at his name across the screen. Then she answered immediately. "Ryan." Her voice came out smaller than she expected. There was noise on his side of the call. Traffic. Car horns. The sound of a turn signal clicking somewhere. "Emily," Ryan said quickly. "I have been trying to call." Emily frowned. "Trying to call?" Ryan hesitated. "Listen, I need you to stay calm." Stay calm. Strange words. Dangerous words. Nobody ever says stay calm before good news. Emily looked toward Vanessa, whose expression had suddenly changed. Not fear exactly. Attention. Like she was waiting for something. Ryan exhaled slowly through the phone. "I am on my way." Emily closed her eyes briefly. "Ryan, who is Vanessa?" Silence. Complete silence. Even through the phone, silence has weight. Emily felt her heart begin beating harder. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Ryan did not answer. He did not ask how Emily knew her name. He did not sound confused. He simply became quiet. Emily opened her eyes. Vanessa was smiling again. That smile returned slowly, like a shadow moving across a wall. Then Ryan finally spoke. "Emily, I can explain everything." Emily felt something inside her chest sink. Because innocent people ask questions. Innocent people say, "What are you talking about?" Innocent people sound surprised. Ryan sounded tired. Tired people sound like they have been carrying secrets. Emily looked down at the ultrasound envelope still pressed against her chest. The corners were bent now from how tightly she had been holding it. Tiny pictures of tiny hands. Tiny feet. Tiny dreams. Ryan's voice came again through the phone, softer this time. "Please just wait for me." Emily stared ahead, without moving. Around her, life inside St. Matthew Medical Center kept moving exactly as it had 30 seconds earlier. But Emily suddenly had the terrifying feeling that somewhere far away, gears had started turning. Quiet gears. Powerful gears. And she had absolutely no idea who had set them into motion. Thousands of feet above the ground, somewhere over Colorado, William Hayes stared out the window of his private jet while endless clouds stretched beneath him like white waves across the sky. Inside the cabin, everything was quiet except for the low hum of engines and the occasional sound of pages turning. A financial report sat open on the table in front of him, untouched for almost 20 minutes. Normally, William noticed details. Numbers. Patterns. Tiny changes inside markets. Tiny changes inside people. 40 years of building companies had taught him that small things usually mattered more than loud things. But at that moment his attention was somewhere else. His assistant Rachel sat across from him reviewing schedules on a tablet. "The board meeting in Seattle has been moved to Thursday," she said. "And the Boston conference requested another interview next week." William nodded slightly without looking away from the window. Rachel paused. She had worked with William Hayes for nearly 11 years. She knew his expressions. She knew his silence. More importantly, she knew what made him quiet. "You are thinking about Emily again," she said gently. William finally looked over at her. A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Am I that obvious?" Rachel smiled back. "Only every day." William looked down toward the watch on his wrist. Emily had not called him in 3 weeks. Not unusual. Emily loved her independence. Ever since college, she had wanted distance from money, from attention, from cameras and headlines and security teams following her around. She wanted normal life. Normal friends. Normal love. William respected that, even if he worried about her constantly. Especially now. especially with the baby coming. He remembered the last time they spoke on video. Emily had been sitting inside the nursery at home, holding up tiny pink shoes while laughing because Ryan had assembled the crib backwards. William smiled, slightly remembering it. Emily had inherited her mother's laugh. Soft, honest, impossible to fake. Then Rachel's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down casually at first. Then her expression changed. Very slightly. But William noticed immediately. He always noticed. What is it? Rachel looked up. Sir. She hesitated. William sat straighter. Rachel. She slowly turned the screen toward him. Security sent this through from St. Matthew Medical Center. William frowned. Emily's location sharing had remained active with family security protocols years after college. Normally nobody paid attention to it. Normally there was no reason to. But beneath the notification was another message. Unexpected visitor report. Unusual activity flagged near Emily Carter. William stared at the screen for several seconds. The cabin suddenly felt smaller. Pull up details, he said calmly. Rachel tapped quickly. Another file opened. A name appeared. Vanessa Reed. William's eyes narrowed slightly. Who is that? Rachel shook her head. I do not know. Silence settled inside the cabin. Outside the windows, the clouds kept drifting endlessly beneath them. The engines kept humming. Nothing around him changed. Yet something had changed. William felt it. Sometimes life sends warnings before it sends disasters. Tiny warnings. Small movements in still water. He reached for his phone and pressed Emily's contact. Ringing. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. William looked out the window again. His face had become completely unreadable now. Rachel had seen that expression before. Investors feared it. Competitors feared it. Because William Hayes only wore that expression when he stopped hoping and started paying attention. Turn the plane around, he said quietly. Back at St. Matthew Medical Center, time felt strange to Emily. Minutes no longer moved normally. Seconds stretched and folded into each other until she could not tell whether 5 minutes had passed or 50. Vanessa had stepped away toward the windows near the end of the hallway, scrolling through her phone as if nothing important had happened. As if she had not just dropped pieces of someone's life onto the floor and walked away from them. Emily sat slowly in a chair outside the maternity wing, still holding the ultrasound envelope against her chest. Around her, nurses walked by carrying clipboards and paper cups. A television mounted near the waiting area played a daytime talk show that nobody seemed to be watching. Somewhere nearby, a newborn cried again before becoming quiet. Life continued. Life always continued. Emily stared at the floor tiles beneath her feet and replayed Ryan's voice in her mind. I can explain everything. For words. For simple words. Yet the more she thought about them, the worse they felt. Because explanations only appear after truths become impossible to hide. Her phone remained silent now. No new messages. No calls. Nothing. Then across the city, tires touched pavement as William Hayes's jet landed. The moment the aircraft stopped moving, William was already standing. Rachel followed beside him through the private terminal while 2 members of security walked several feet behind them. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. William's face remained calm, but Rachel had worked with him long enough to understand the difference between calm and stillness. Calm meant peace. Stillness meant calculation. They stepped into a black SUV waiting outside. The driver closed the door and looked into the rearview mirror. St. Matthew Medical Center, sir? William stared ahead for a moment. No. Rachel looked up immediately. Sir. William folded his hands together slowly. Not yet. Rachel frowned slightly. William turned toward her. I want information first. Rachel immediately opened her tablet. William looked out the window while the city moved around them. Traffic lights changed. People crossed sidewalks carrying grocery bags and coffee cups. Somewhere a bus rolled past. Normal life. Ordinary life. Yet William had spent decades learning one thing about crises. The first story people tell you is almost never the real story. Rachel looked down at her screen. Vanessa Reed, 32 years old, marketing consultant. She continued reading quietly. No criminal history. No lawsuits. No obvious financial issues. William remained silent. Rachel kept scrolling. Then her eyes paused. Interesting. William looked at her. What? Rachel frowned. She began consulting for Carter Dynamics 8 months ago. William's eyes narrowed slightly. Carter Dynamics. Ryan's company. Silence filled the SUV for several seconds. Then Rachel looked up again. 8 months. William asked quietly. Rachel nodded once. William stared out the window again. 8 months. Emily was 8 months pregnant. Sometimes facts arrive quietly. Sometimes they do not scream. They simply sit beside each other waiting for someone to notice them. William slowly removed his glasses and looked down at them in his hand. Then he asked a question that caused Rachel to stop typing completely. Find out when Ryan first learned who Emily really was. Rachel blinked. Sir. William looked back out the window. His expression never changed. Because I suddenly have a feeling this story started long before today. Rain had started falling outside by the time Ryan Carter pulled into the hospital parking structure. Thin streams of water slid across his windshield while his hands tightened around the steering wheel. He had driven through 2 red lights already and barely remembered doing it. His phone sat on the passenger seat beside him with 7 missed calls from Vanessa and 3 from Emily. Ryan stared at the screen for a moment before shutting off the engine. For several seconds, he did not move. Sometimes people delay opening a door because deep down they already know what waits on the other side. Inside St. Matthew Medical Center, Emily remained seated near the maternity wing windows. Vanessa had disappeared toward the lobby nearly 15 minutes earlier after receiving a phone call she refused to explain. Emily had not followed her. She no longer had the energy. She sat with both hands around a paper cup of tea a nurse had brought her even though the tea had already gone cold. She had not taken a single sip. Her thoughts felt scattered now. Ryan knew more than you think. Vanessa's words continued moving through her mind like echoes trapped inside an empty room. Then she heard footsteps running. Emily looked up immediately. Ryan appeared at the end of the hallway wearing a dark coat, still wet from the rain outside. His eyes searched frantically until they found her. Relief crossed his face for 1 second. Then guilt replaced it. Emily noticed both. Ryan slowed as he approached her. Emily. His voice sounded out of breath. Emily looked at him quietly. She had spent months wanting his attention, wanting him to look at her the way he used to. Now he was standing directly in front of her, and somehow he felt farther away than ever. Ryan lowered himself into the chair beside her. Are you okay? Emily stared at him. Out of all possible questions, that was the one he chose. Are you okay? Not what happened. Not what did Vanessa say. Not why is she here. Emily looked down at the ultrasound envelope resting in her lap. Who is she? Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Emily felt her stomach drop because once again he was silent. Silence had become Ryan's favorite language lately. Ryan rubbed both hands across his face before leaning forward. Emily, things are complicated. Emily almost laughed. Not because anything felt funny. Because pain sometimes reaches a place where it stops feeling sharp and starts feeling strange instead. Complicated. Another word people use when simple truths become uncomfortable. Emily looked toward him slowly. Do you love her? Ryan looked at her immediately. For the first time since arriving, fear entered his eyes. Real fear. Emily watched him carefully. She realized something then. She was no longer afraid of the answer. She was afraid of the hesitation. Seconds passed. 1, 2, 3. Ryan looked away. That was enough. Emily lowered her eyes and stared at the tiny ultrasound images beneath her fingers. Tiny hands. Tiny feet. Tiny heartbeat. Somewhere down the hall, elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Nurses continued walking past. Life kept moving. Ryan reached toward her carefully. Emily, please listen to me. She pulled her hand back before he touched it. Ryan froze. Neither of them spoke. Then Emily's phone lit up beside her on the chair. An unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. Then something made her answer. Hello. A calm female voice spoke from the other side. Mrs. Carter, this is Rachel from Hayes Global. Emily felt her entire body become still. Ryan looked toward her immediately. Your father has arrived in the city, Rachel said softly. And he asked me to tell you something. He said not to worry anymore. He said he is handling it now. Ryan stared at Emily as the phone slowly lowered from her ear. The color had drained from his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Even the air between them felt different now, because some names change a room the moment they enter it, even if the person is not standing there yet. William Hayes was one of those names. Emily looked down at the dark screen in her hand. Her father was here. Somehow that fact should have made her feel relieved immediately, but emotions do not always arrive in order. Relief came second. The first thing that arrived was confusion. because part of her still could not understand how an ordinary afternoon had transformed into something unrecognizable. Ryan swallowed hard and shifted in his seat. "Emily," he said quietly, "listen to me before things become worse." Emily slowly looked at him. Worse. Another strange word. Worse than what exactly? Worse than standing inside a hospital realizing your husband had hidden parts of his life from you. Worse than discovering another woman knew things you did not. Worse than feeling your entire future shift beneath your feet. Ryan rubbed his hands together nervously. Emily noticed that immediately. Ryan only did that when he was anxious. He used to do it before presentations or difficult meetings. She had always thought it was kind of sweet. Now she hated that she still noticed small things about him. "I was going to tell you everything," Ryan said. Emily stared at him. "When?" she asked softly. Ryan looked away. Silence answered first. Again. Across town, William sat inside the back of the SUV while Rachel reviewed information appearing across her screen. The city lights reflected against the windows as rain continued falling outside. Rachel looked up slowly. "Sir, there is more." William remained still. Ryan first searched Hayes Global Records almost 2 years ago. Rachel paused. 3 months before proposing to Emily. William said nothing. Not one word. Rachel continued carefully. There are also internal messages between Ryan and Vanessa discussing business opportunities connected to expansion funding. The SUV suddenly felt very quiet. William looked down at his watch. He remembered teaching Emily how to ride a bicycle when she was 8 years old. He remembered standing behind her with one hand lightly holding the seat while she laughed and yelled for him not to let go. He remembered her first day of college. He remembered carrying her sleeping body upstairs after she fell asleep watching movies as a little girl. Parents remember strange things. Tiny things. William looked out at the rain sliding down the window beside him. Then he spoke softly. "Take me to the hospital." Back at St. Matthew Medical Center, Emily slowly stood from her chair. Ryan stood immediately too. "Emily." She looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time all day, she was not searching his face for explanations or apologies or hope. She was simply seeing him. And suddenly she noticed how tired he looked. How nervous he looked. How guilty he looked. She realized something then. Love had been making decisions for her for months. Fear had been making decisions for her too. But neither one was speaking anymore. Emily placed one hand gently over her stomach. Her daughter shifted beneath her hand again. Small movement. Tiny reminder. Then she looked directly into Ryan's eyes and quietly asked the question she should have asked a long time ago. "Ryan, when did you stop choosing us?"